Hello, everybody, and welcome to We Measure the World, a podcast produced by scientists for scientists.
The traditional way, is doing it using different weather apps to try to look at the conditions to do scheduling, because we have a very short window to do a lot of work. So we have to be as efficient as possible. And we have, extreme weather up here that really affects our quality of work that we can do, safety. So I was constantly being like a weather person for my crews, as far as this is the conditions you're going to see, this is what we need to change, here's where I'm going to have you work because we could see a rain event here. And I was doing that all through kind of a manual process, and I was like, there's got to be a better way to kind of automate this, right? And that's where we started building Pavewise into it.
That's just a small taste of what we have in store for you today. We Measure the World explores interesting environmental research trends, how scientists are solving research issues, and what tools are helping them better understand measurements across the entire soil-plant atmosphere continuum. Today's guest is Bryce Wuori. Bryce Wuori has always had a passion for construction. In pursuing this passion, he studied construction engineering at North Dakota State University and holds a Master's of Project Management from the University of Mary. As the CEO and co-founder of Pavewise, Bryce believes technology is the future key to success for the pavement and construction industry. And today he's here to talk about how integrating weather data can improve construction project timelines, cost, safety, and outcomes. So Bryce, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Brad, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let's get started. Before we get into talking about Pavewise and the cool stuff that you're doing there, we'd love to know more about your personal background. How did you get involved in construction management and eventually begin your company of Pavewise?
Well, it all started, I'm third generation construction. So I fell into the industry through family. My grandpa owned a construction company. My dad took it over, and eventually my brother and I took it over. And from there, we were able to pretty much run our company. It was kind of when the technology was starting to take over and machine control and stuff for equipment. So we were able to adapt some technologies, and I just always like to build things. One of my hobbies is actually carpentry. So it just naturally fell into it. And I always kind of got a little obsessed with how do we improve these processes and certain things with technologies. And that's how Pavewise kind of was developed. We created it to help our own company succeed, and then found there was a void out there in the industry that other people were having the same issues.
So about how long did it take you, I guess, from doing your own thing or working with the family business to say, hey, I need to do something new, I need to do something different, and kind of spin things off and really dig into this project management and incorporating data, real-time data, to improving, these construction projects?
It took I'd say about 5 or 6 years. The traditional way, I was doing it was running a lot of using different weather apps to try to look at the conditions to do scheduling, because I'm from North Dakota and we have a very short window to do a lot of work. So we have to be as efficient as possible. And we have, extreme weather up here that really affects our quality of work that we can do, safety. So I was constantly being like a weather person for my crews, as far as this is the conditions you're going to see, this is what we need to change, here's where I'm going to have you work because we could see a rain event here. And I was doing that all through kind of a manual process. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to kind of automate this, right? And that's where we started building Pavewise into it, and found success in it. And we ran it through like 27 of our projects in like 5 different states. And we're like, wow, this is really helping us with our scheduling. This is helping us with compliance. EPA requires you on construction sites to record your rainfall. And if there's an amount and you hit that threshold, you have to do an inspection, do a recording. So there was another piece of the puzzle that we're like, we can automate that too, right? With this technology and this kind of mindset. And that's how it happened. And it took probably 6 years, honestly, to kind of really to thought process to building something to like a full out product of other people could use and run with.
So you're talking about that kind of a manual process in the before times. Was that a lot of like, I guess, pen and paper? Are we working with Excel, those kinds of things? Is that kind of how it used to be, or maybe I'm sure it's still done in many ways that way.
Yeah, pen and paper traditional methods are our biggest competitor right now. How it's done to stay in compliance is a physical rain gauge that you go buy Home Depot or wherever, and you set it up, and you have to drive out to the site after a rain event and see how much rain you have, journal it. And then if it rains again within 24 hours, you have to do it again. But it's kind of one of the last things people have on their mind when they're trying to run a project is like, oh, I got to go check that rain gauge to stay in compliance, right? And we found, and even with the company I was with, it was not an efficient way to track what was happening on your project because sometimes you'd forget to dump that rain gauge or it would evaporate on a hot day. And you're like, well, I know I got more than a tenth of rain here. There was puddles everywhere. So we knew it was a kind of an inefficient way that needed to be automated. And that's kind of what Groundtruth took a hold of was kind of automating that process for compliance and for scheduling and proof of work.
Let's talk about some of the challenges. I guess in order to talk about solutions, let's go back and talk about challenges. So what are some of the main challenges that are faced by construction projects, when it comes to weather events or other things like that? What is the need for, you talked about compliance, but there are other concerns and challenges that go into that. Can you detail a little bit into that?
So a lot of these projects have a completion date. And if you don't complete this work by this date, you get liquidated damages. And unfortunately, we can't control weather. And having good documentation and proving, you got this rain, or you didn't have temperatures to do your work, or even safety reasons, high speed winds with debris or cranes doing picks. So we're running a lot of numbers right now with states. We're working with North Dakota right now, and we're finding contractors are putting a lot of risk in their bids, which make it a really inefficiency for our infrastructure industry, because that's money that could go towards more roads, but they're putting it into their bids for weather risk. And really, the reason for that is there's just not a good method in place to have the good documentation to take that risk out and have the owner work with the contractor building it to be like, listen, this happened. It's not your fault. It's not ours. Let's mitigate this risk and kind of use a tool to use efficiently and agree on the data that happened on site and we can't control.
I definitely want to dig into mitigation of risks with that. Let's back up and talk about Pavewise in general and your offerings with Pavewise Pro, with Groundtruth. What is all going into these offerings and your services, and how are they then? What's the impact that people are seeing when it comes to mitigating risks and other things?
Yeah, so Pavewise Pro is the main software. We've built it specifically for asphalt paving contractors. And one of the reasons is asphalt paving is one of the most sensitive construction processes out there. If you think about it, there's 300-degree mix coming that cools really fast. You can only get your compaction and quality when that mix stays warm. There's a lot of logistics go into it. Oil and water don't mix. Everybody knows that. And the main component of asphalt is AC binder oil. So mitigating those risks and helping them with Pavewise Pro, we help them identify upcoming impacts to that project for scheduling out to 7 days. And we've built a model that actually helps that. But then we also take in consideration of what happened on the project, and we give out text notifications. We automate prior to these events happening best practices, like a wind's picking up. They get notified that you're expected to see 15 to 20 mile per hour winds. Tighten up your roller passes, make sure your trucks are tarped. Just things to be proactive that could cause implications on the progress or the quality of the project. That's Pavewise Pro. It's built specifically for paving contractors in the asphalt world. Groundtruth was kind of spun off of that because we realized that we can help other industries that are sensitive to weather. Bridge contractors, horizontal, anybody that works outside, right? Which is a lot of construction. And Groundtruth is designed to just help with the compliance of proving the conditions on site. Text notify, you can put in custom text notifications when you want to know that your site is at a 15 mile per hour wind for safety reasons, or at a 90-degree temperature with the humidity of a certain to implement a dehydration text to your project foremen to let them know to give your employees a break. We can do all that. And the key part to it is the automation. Instead of having to open up a weather app or be constantly thinking about the weather, we now pretty much are like a weather assistant for them in their pocket. They get that text notification. They know what's happened or what has happened. They get their weekly breakdown of site conditions, and it's just helps them save time and kind of decrease a little bit of that risk in the whole process.
I mean, part of this is having that kind of localized weather that's there on site. Can you explain a little bit about how having kind of these hyper local weather stations helps with this whole process and automation?
The hyperlocal weather stations are multifaceted for us. Contractors are using them to automate the compliance, so they don't have to send somebody out to dump a rain gauge or do the journaling. These are collecting that data every 15 minutes, automatically putting it into a report for them, text notifying them when they need to know certain conditions that happened on site so that they can do their compliance. So there's time savings behind it, but there's also what we're finding is we are an insurance package for them, so that if an event happens, the site conditions aren't favorable for work, they, with highly accurate data, they can take this and prove everything and not be concerned about is it going to be accepted. I've personally ran into the issue of before we ran hyper locals, and that's why we started doing it. Honestly, was we got into some litigations where there was a weather station within 6 miles of the project and the data got rejected because it wasn't on site data. Well, we fixed that real quick by putting a station on site, and that's been huge for proving those actual conditions, because we all know a mile away could be completely different as far as weather goes for, and we're seeing that a lot now that we have up to 50 of these deployed.
What are some of the weather data measurements, or what types of weather data are you looking for? Are you incorporating into your offering there?
The biggest that we track is definitely rain. So we have to every site is required to track rain, and then we do track wind and temperature are the next biggest ones. Depending on the industry and what's being done, there's the humidity is important in concrete curing and even in asphalt curing. It's not exactly curing, but the cooling process of that. Understanding how the wind's cooling it and allowing traffic onto it and those types of things really gives a lot of data to allow the contractor to make decisions. So wind, temperature, and rainfall are by far the biggest that we use, but most common.
How did you find out about meters weather stations?
I was actually down at TRB in Washington, D.C. for another event, and I just happened to walk by a booth, and we'd been dabbling with some other weather stations, and we talked about building our own, and we found them, and it was just meant to be. And I ordered one, I think that day, and got it out the next week, and we started seeing the value of how we run the W's. So we're getting everything brought up into our software, and having that pretty close to real time data is very we found very attractive to the industry, because they need to make decisions very fast and quick. But that's how we found Meter, and ever since there, it's been just an amazing relationship that we are really excited to see where it goes in the future.
We are too. I'll say that from my end. Yeah, being able to have those Atmos 41Ws, yeah, they're on site. Are you also placing them on, say, for instance, on the pavers, on the machinery themselves, or are they just kind of, I mean, because, when we're dealing with road construction, I mean, you're moving along, over miles. And like you said, that's going to be changing from one place to the other. Or is it just you have a specific spot, kind of a central location for those sites?
It's a combination of both. It depends on the type of work. Like we just set up a big project down in Florida, and it was 7 miles, and we set up one on each end and one in the middle, just to kind of collect that data. And we are testing. Actually, we have one set up on a paver right now, doing a research project and just seeing how it collects that data and reacts to being on a piece of machinery. That seems to be very attractive to the paving world because they are constantly moving, and now they know the conditions of that wherever that paver is working, they know the crews are working right there and everything. So that's going to be very interesting in the future to see where that goes. And one thing that we're really testing with that is we have this highly accurate data now for this location where the work is being done, is taking it a step further. And can we take this data now, and as we get into more autonomy and decision making with equipment, can we make the equipment understand its environment it's in to perform better and be safer and make decisions like a human would? Because you need to know the conditions you're in to make those changes, and that data is very important in those decision makings for those machines. So
that's really interesting. First of all, I know from our end, we haven't had too many applications of folks putting weather station, having a mobile weather station, which is really cool. The vast majority, they got their pole, they got stuff planted in the ground. It's going to stay there for a while. But being able to have things move around and getting that local weather data as you're moving around is really cool. And the other side, I know, we've talked with folks in, the precision agriculture side of things, and they've got machinery, that's super amazing that, can basically run on its own. It's, GPS and it can, you can program it in and it can do whatever. Are we getting to that point, like you said, with I guess, construction engineering, with that equipment where things can be programmed and you can have machinery that could potentially run on its own?
Yeah. Absolutely. One of the big pushes with that is construction industry is in dire need of workers. And so the industry's adapted and found ways to use technology to automate, like down in Florida, there's a company called Telio. They're actually setting up payloaders and stockpile sites to load trucks and move material with no operator in them, or the operators in a air-conditioned office running it from a desk, right? And the project we're starting on Monday is actually a technology research project where we're testing the stations. We have 3 stations on it, and we have a new piece of equipment. First one ever. It came over from Europe, and it's a machine that's actually making adjustments and learning its environment. And we're kind of looking at the data, what it's collecting versus our stations, and understanding how this machine's operating in its actual environment. So it's definitely going in that direction.
So along with that, what are some of these other, I guess, what are some of the main obstacles or challenges that you're seeing when it comes to, integrating weather intelligence into what you're offering, or any other, ways that you're seeking to impact the industry?
Right now, we are developing something that has never been seen before by the industry. So we're doing a lot of behavior change. It's always been done this way. Well, now there's a way that we can do it more accurately and actually save you time. It takes a while for the industry to trust that can be done that way and change their behavior, but we're having good success with that. It's a slow process, but we haven't had a company or a pilot or anything that we've done where we set up stations and our software and they've not found value in it. We've never had an unsuccessful or a customer churn on us because they didn't find value in it. So now our big thing is how do we implement this across an entire industry and change the behaviors to improve the quality, the industry itself, and just the whole process. And that'll take time, but we got good partners at the company, industry leading manufacturers to DOTs and stuff that are listening and see there needs to be change happening, and they're supporting it. So that support has been phenomenal.
Let's dive into some case studies, some stories. What have been some recent projects where Pavewise has helped when it comes to impacting the industry, mitigating risks, ensuring safety, all that kind of stuff. You said you're out. You've got you said over 50 projects right now that have been ongoing with Pavewise. Yeah, what are some of the big stories that you've been learning?
Oh, we're learning a lot. We're 50 we just hit over $5 billion worth of work that we're now protecting or helping make decisions on in 13 different states now. We just sent a unit out to California today, so it might be 14 states. But some of the neatest things that we're finding, like what fills my cup a lot, is helping the industry. The case studies of having that operations manager that now is saving an hour or two a day by having our system automatically journal their site conditions and their weather impacts, text them when they are in compliance, is what I really enjoy hearing. And we're finding that's really what a lot of the users like, is the time savings, the automation. But from more of like a standpoint of dollar, and like one of the cool projects that we're working on now is we have a project that was impacted by we're up to 21 days. They're 67% over their average rainfall. And we've collected all this data for 3 months now. I think it's been about 2.5, 3 months. And the completion date's coming up pretty soon, and they're not going to complete it on time. There's no way. They've lost 21 days. And the DOT, the owner, has actually kind of had a mind switch of, you guys have this data up here, let's use it to come into an agreement on this project so that we don't have to charge this contractor liquidated damages. That the amount of high accurate data is there so that they can make a good decision. So potentially this one here, we're looking at saving this contractor up towards of $100,000. And the state is seeing the value in it, because we're starting to show them every contractor is building risk into their projects, right? So, I mean, it costs them a lot of money, and this tool is helping them do that. We helped a contractor prove compliance of on a paving project where they had a specification in where they couldn't pave this thin lift over 20 miles per hour winds. And we were able to prove every day that they were in compliance. And there was one day where it was close, and there was kind of a discrepancy in what, well, my app said this and my tool said this. And we're like, well, we had a station less than a half a mile away that said this. And I think we're going to trust this data more. And it kind of just went away. The data is very powerful in decision making and in, I keep saying mediation, but like, just, it doesn't lie, right? I mean, it's what happened, and it solves so many questions and that you used to previously be there. So that's exciting. And we got 2 more projects that are kind of in the same situation. The one contractor is in $5,000 a day liquidated damages. They've been hurricane. Actually, this was the hurricane in South Carolina came through here, and they've been impacted heavily, and they had some damage on their site, even some sound barrier walls tipped over. They had to file a insurance claim. They actually used our data to show that there was 93 mile per hour winds and stuff that actually happened on the site, right? And that helped them get through that process that much faster.
You're talking about all these big events and unexpected weather events and other things like that. But I think one of the things that caught my eye was at the beginning of what you said there, because even if you're saving folks, an hour or two a day, and you're dealing with billions of dollars in projects, I mean, even just that savings of an hour or two a day is going to be huge over the time span of that project. And so I think, yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff that you're doing when it comes to mitigating risks, again, facing extreme weather events. But when it comes to just the simple inefficiencies that we see, and this isn't just, with construction, but also any kind of, project management that folks have to deal with. It's trying to figure out how to, streamline those projects, those tasks. What do people need to do, and managing those large groups. And there's always leakage, right? There's always stuff that goes on. There's always, project creep and other things. And so being able to find ways to have improve those efficiencies goes a long way to helping, cost effectiveness of any project, but especially looking at construction there.
Absolutely. And looking at it from a standpoint of reevaluating how the project went, and now being able to find trends in data in the weather and seeing like, well, my idle time was up 70% on this project. Why? Well, if you had 21 days of rain, you're more than likely going to have a lot of idle time if you're trying to work. So we're really finding value too, or the users are of being able to identify, like, how can I be more efficient and what is causing this? And making those decisions. Like I see this all the time. Like, look, we just told you got a 90% chance of rain and it's raining right now. You're not going to be able to work today. Shut your equipment off and call it a day. And I think that kind of confirms and helps them make those decisions a little bit, that we can't control this, and sitting around watching it rain isn't going to help anybody. It's just going to cost the project more money and fuel and emissions and time. So
Actually, could you go into a little bit of detail about just kind of how the whole process works of people using Pavewise? What would a day in the life of a project manager look like, whether they're there at the home office or they're there on site? How would they use your systems, and what would they do? What would they be looking for in order to make those decisions about, like you said, whether to call it a day or to say, hey, we've got 5 hours today, or something along those lines?
on a more mobile crew that is moving around a lot more, they're using it as a mechanism to help them determine where they can work the most efficient sometimes. Like here where we're headquartered, we have 5 6 stations around town, and even in a 10 15 mile radius, if it's raining on this project, it could be clear on this project. So they pick up and move instead of wasting their time and going over to see what the conditions are here. And scheduling reasons, we do have a proactive API in ours as well that's giving out predictions on that. But also where it helps that contractor is waking up in the morning, and instead of having to drive out to each site and see where he can move his crews to, or send his crews out there and see that they can't that they can't work because the conditions aren't right, he goes on his app and he can see at 4 in the morning, oh, we got 0.75 inches of rain. We ain't working there today. I'm not even going to send the crew out there. We're going to stay in the office or shop and take care of things, or go find, let me check this site. Okay, we only got 0.15 inches over here. We'll be able to work there by 9. So he's making those switches without even having to physically be there on site and see the conditions. So that's the huge time savings for like the mobile. The projects that are longer term, and there's a lot of mega projects, 2 3 year projects. It's getting set up, and it's getting, it's helping with the compliance of telling you when you need to do a rainfall notification or a SWIP or erosion control. But it's also, they're more of a set it and leave it. They're taking the report every 7 days out of it and importing it into their project management software. They're using the data to prove conditions. They're using it for more of a compliance tool. They're not in it near as much. They might go in it to look at the upcoming week schedule and stuff like that, but they're in one spot. They can't move anywhere else. So they're really more using it as a insurance tool.
You talked about working with API, and I would assume you're pulling from National Weather Service data. Is that what you're using?
Open weather.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So with that, are you delving at all into predictive weather analytics and forecasting? And I guess how far out are your expectations, or do you feel you're accurately or able to accurately forecast? It's a huge. I mean, this is kind of, we can go on a tangent here with weather forecasting, and especially when you're dealing, like you mentioned, in South Carolina and Florida, you're dealing with hurricanes and other big weather events. And how do you deal with the forecasting side of things when it comes to Pavewise?
Yeah, forecasting is always difficult. We don't even try to go out any farther than 7 days. And it's more of this is potentially how your project could be impacted in the next 7 days. So we built what we call impact calculators into our software. So if a 1/4 inch of rain is going to shut you down for the day, that's a high impact, right? So you can actually see, based off of certain weather contingencies, as set up like your impact. So you can actually see your progress. And honestly, we've had some project managers even see that, the next 3 days of work are not very good and efficient. So they might work extra late 2 days prior to try to make up for one of those days. We see really highly accurate times, and sometimes we're just like, where did that data come from? And it's a tool, right? It's just there to try to give you some guidance. And that's one of the issues that this industry was having, was trying to use weather models to prove site conditions and stuff. And it's not accurate enough data. And it was not helping them. It was sometimes hurting them. So we have it in there to help, but we inform everybody it's a prediction. It's not perfect.
What are some of your future endeavors? What are you hoping to expand into when it comes to Pavewise and your services?
Oh, we have a lot of ideas. When you've been in the industry long enough, you see all the inefficiencies. We're really interested in using this data to help the construction equipment perform better, and operators when a condition changes in the environment, training them and notifying them that they should change as well to adapt is very important. In that proactiveness I talk about, being proactive, like if we know these conditions are going to change, we have to change as well, or else it's just you're going to have risk and issues happening. So being able to identify those changes that are upcoming and building them into more automation that maybe even the machine can make the adjustment for. We're also working in insurance. Honestly, there's a lot of weather insurance out there, and a lot of these large projects have policies on wind and stuff like that, and we can help prove those conditions to either protect the contractor or help the insurance company understand that this actually happened. So that's been kind of a area that we're dabbling in quite a bit, and the final being in being more efficient with moisture. Asphalt, concrete, they all get put through a burner or a process where it's heat to dry out the material and make, the AC brought in. And if we can use weather conditions, the wind blowing and stuff, and help them determine where and what material in the piles have the least amount of moisture, we can reduce burner fuel, reduce emissions, reduce costs. So we're running models right now in quarries. We actually have a unit set up in one of the biggest quarries in North America, owned by Texas Materials. And it's just like a piece of food, right? If you blow on it, it's going to cool. So the wind blows on these aggregate piles and it's drying the material over here on this side, or if the wind comes from this direction, or rain, or even if the sun's radiating on it in a certain, we can kind of predict like this is your best chance of success if you take from right here. So we're building these stockpile prediction models using weather, highly accurate weather on site. So I mean, it's limitless, honestly.
It sounds like it. I mean, it's kind of fun to hear. I mean, starting out with dealing with asphalt paving and being able to expand out, because like you said, there's a lot of applications for this kind of localized weather and what you can do with it. I mean, we've seen the same thing, like I mentioned earlier, with in the agriculture industry, is where you will have farmers, growers, producers, where they will have fields and they will have this one plot has its own microclimate compared to another plot that only might be, several acres away, those kinds of things. And so being able to see these applications, and like you said, I mean, it'd be fun to see what Pavewise will be looking like in 5 to 10 years, and what other industries will you be able to impact beyond, construction and other things. I mean, you talked about mining, you talked about getting into working with insurance. I don't know, do you have anything that you really would like to focus on, that you'd like to kind of hyper focus on when it comes to what Pavewise will be getting into in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, obviously AI is a huge buzzword, but what AI is really good at is managing and organizing data, right? It needs large amounts of data sets and stuff. So being able to, collect all this data in these different areas and help even potentially predictive models be even more accurate, help identify risks. I mean, like that's one of our biggest things too, is like environmental conditions do cause a lot of safety issues on these projects, from slips and falls. If there's a little bit of rain on the surface, to the wind causes so much issues with doors slamming and people getting hurt, debris flying, lightning strikes, obviously. So um, I'm really passionate about trying to find a way to help the industry be safer and more efficient. And using AI, we have some AI running in our backend now to help manage documents now. And actually, we just came out with an AI camera that can take a picture of some of the other sensors and gauges we have, and it's smart enough to digitize it and put it into a format for them and pin the location in our map. So, yeah, super excited about what the potential of AI has for the construction industry and just in making people that much more efficient in this industry without even knowing it. That's the coolest thing about AI is a lot of times you don't even have to have it present to really be impactful.
Now, kind of coming back around to what you said earlier about how the construction industry might be a little bit slow to adopt new technologies and processes, right? I guess what are some of the ways that you're dealing, I guess, with, for lack of a better word, from marketing or outreach when it comes to helping to change people's minds when it comes to automation and having integrated weather data?
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate that I've been in this industry, so I knew a lot of people and had a lot of people to trust that when I had a product that could help them, they believed me, right? So I wasn't just trying to sell them cold, I guess. But what's really helped us is anytime there's a change or disruption, finding that champion company or champion within that company that is wants to use technology or wants to see a change and sees the inefficiencies and just kind of piggybacking on them to make it happen because they're going to ultimately be the ones that push it further and further and champion it. So we have a lot of those companies now that are our champions. We have some that are really pushing it hard, and that's been huge for us is getting those people because it's organic. So like we do a lot of organic. It's just kind of the old construction way, shake a hand, want to meet in person. I unfortunately have to do a lot of traveling to go out and meet new companies and make that relationship, which I'm totally fine with. I love meeting new people and stuff, but we have to build that trust. If that trust isn't built, we have quite a significant less chance to be successful with them. So we do some digital marketing as well. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I do a lot of posts about the industry, about weather, and that's really there's a lot of professionals on LinkedIn, and it's a really unique platform to share and connect with people. But probably about 75% of our marketing is through organic, word of mouth, some expos, and just having good champions, users that are want to talk about how they're using a technology to save 2 hours a day.
You're talking about the private sector. Are you seeing much movement or potential for movement with, when it comes to the government side of things, when it comes to, policy changes or, when you're dealing, especially when you're dealing with compliance? I mean, that's huge. And being able to see how, those processes might move a little bit slowly as well. Do you see any change or any positive outlooks there?
Absolutely. We're working with three DOTs right now to where two of them have approved this method and this technology to be used for compliance because they've seen the inefficiencies of the original method and they're like, this is the way to do it. And so we're working on some states right now. I'm working on a special provision for a contract to allow the use of a technology like ours to be the mediation tool to identify working days, non-working days, and take the risk or share the risk between the contract. So that is a slower process by far. Anytime the government gets involved, it goes through a lot of hoops and is a lot slower. But quite honestly, it's unbelievable how accepting they've been because they see the issues they have with it now and the amount of money they spend on manpower and just to stay in compliance that they have to push, and the automation of it can just save them so much time. They're the ones that are paying the bills, right? So it will have some states in the next few years, I think, implementing the software and the technology into their contracts pretty commonly.
Well, we look forward to that, and we're glad to be a part of what you guys are doing. I hope that we can be, definitely long-term partners in being able to help you succeed in whatever you're doing there with Pavewise. I think that's all the questions that I have. Is there anything else that you'd like to let our audience know about Pavewise, where they can find more about you guys and the cool stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, no, I mean, the biggest thing, the infrastructure industry is really cool. I'm always supporting that. Like, if you think of all the roads we drive on and the bridges and everything, it's very vital and important to our industry. And I like to shine a little light on the importance of that. And next time you drive by a road construction project and stuff, just kind of, say hi and say thank you, because without this infrastructure, you imagine it's really one of the biggest things we have going for us in the United States is we have pretty good infrastructure compared to a lot of other places. So keeping that infrastructure up, using technology to keep building more efficient and better, we get to do that. We're the ones making these changes right now. They can find I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, pavewisepro.com, can check us out, and happy to talk anything weather, construction, engineering. I will talk for hours about any of them. So reach out if you have any questions or just want to learn more.
Awesome. And again, for those in the audience, if you'd like to know more about our weather stations, especially what we talked about here with the Atmos 41W, you can check us out at metergroup.com as well. So thanks again, Bryce, for your time. It's been a great discussion, and I hope everybody in the audience has really appreciated this, especially within the private sector, and be able to see, like we mentioned before, kind of the bleeding edge of technology. A lot of really cool stuff going on out there.
Yeah, it really is. It's fun, and I appreciate you having me on. And we're out just trying to change the industry and make it better. And we're doing it with your technology, and it's fun to have that kind of partnership and just keep grinding away out there.
And if you in the audience have any questions about this topic or want to hear more, feel free to contact us at metergroup.com or reach out to us on Twitter at meter_ENV. And you can also view the full transcript from today in the podcast description. That's all for now. Stay safe, and we'll catch you next time on We Measure the World.